And we're live. Another episode of The Oddest Couple. I'm Felix Levine. To my right is the star of the show, John Alite. A little bit of a different format today since we're having technical difficulties with the camera. So we're sitting together next to each other for the first time, which is kind of fun. We want to give a big shout out to our sponsor, Legacy 11 Vodka.
Plus, we had a couple of shots.
That you can find on LegacyFamilySpirits.com. Let me just double check that I got that right. Yep, LegacyFamilySpirits.com. They're in 39 states right now, and they will be in all 50 states shortly. 11 times distilled, 11 times filtered, sugar-free and gluten-free. So go check that out if you want a new savory vodka to your arsenal. As always, follow us on Patreon. For as low as $8 a month, you can get early access to every episode. You can write us in directly there, and everything goes up there, as I mentioned early, and there's also some bonus content up there already for you, so go check that out at patreon.com/The Oddest Couple Podcast. I think that's it. I guess first we'll start off with a little bit of feedback from one of our latest episodes that we talked about, Sammy Gravano. Obviously, a lot of people had a lot of things to say. We got a lot of messages, a lot of comments.
What I need to say is, I still didn't get my $3,000.
Yeah. So, which is ultimately the most important thing. Any comments or any observations from people's reactions to what you had to say?
Yeah, I have so many people that write so many dumb things that, you know, when you get these goofballs that don't understand the mob and they watch some Sopranos or something, and they talk about it like they have an intelligent outlook on what we're talking about when they have no knowledge of it. So some of them, I'll give you an example. Someone said, well, you know, Sammy was one of the most famous underbosses ever, which is one of the dumbest statements anybody made. He was only an underboss for a very short period of time. And the reason why he became famous as the underboss, because he was the biggest rat cooperator in the history of the mob up to that time. And so that made him famous. But somebody also said, one of the other comments was, well, he doesn't need to go do these killings himself because he had a reputation prior growing up as a killer. And I don't know what part of that they don't understand. He has one. He's not Roy DeMeo, who we're going to talk about. So when you want to talk about prolific killers or serious mob guys, that crew was a serious crew of killers that killed directly with their own hand. Sammy never did that, not in the past, or not later on when he was a made guy, or not when he was a captain, or not when he became the underboss for a very short period of time. So when these guys are making these comments, they have no knowledge. They don't even know what they're talking about. They make ridiculous comments. When you talk about Jimmy Burke, he's another guy that went out in his own hand and did work. Not only did he have other guys do it, but he went out in his own work. And when people talk about, well, Sammy was an Italian-made guy on the boss, and how would any other guys know? Well, Jimmy Burke's a perfect example. He's Irish. And I wish he was around for when he used to say that to him, and see what would happen to you if you said that to him. And along goes that. There's the same thing when I have a lot of black friends that everybody knows. You're going to tell me they're not gangsters, they don't know what they're doing, they're not tough guys. No one's going to tell them what to do. And when they walk around the prison system, no one does tell them what to do. Actually, they usually ask to help when guys like Sammy go to jail. You know, they look to pay him, or they look for help out of him. So, you know, these are naive guys that don't really understand what they're talking about because they're not from the street. So they write, you know, some dumb comments in there. One of them also said that he's got integrity. Integrity? So we're going to go on to another show about him. There'll be a part 2. He has no integrity. He was DB's partner in the porn industry for child pornography. So, you know, we're going to go into that too. So there is no integrity. This is Sammy's way of mafia. He was a drug dealer. When he talks against drug dealers, he was selling ecstasy, and he went back to jail for that. So, some of the comments I'm addressing, some of these dumb comments that I read.
What do you think is, I mean, there's like, it's funny because I think people think that there's like a, you know, team or sides here. Like, there's a lot of people that are loyal and defend him with no regard. Like, why do you think that is? Why do you think people love or are infatuated by his story?
Because they don't understand the mob. They're fanboys, fangirls or whatever. If they understood the mob, they would understand that any of these things is not something to look up to. He's not intelligent. I said this last time, and I'm going to bring up another name again. I brought up Mikey Scars DiLeonardo, was best friends with Junior Gotti. He was a captain. He was basically a concierge to him and to the family, and he had that position, I believe, if he wanted it. But he's very intelligent. People would say whether you like him, don't like him. Was Michael a killer with his own hand? No, but he doesn't claim to be. So there's the difference. This is a guy that claims to be, so I'm going to use two different people. The other guy doesn't claim to be. He just claims to be that he has a big understanding of the mafia and this world, and he does. So there's the difference. You got a guy that's pretending that he's this prolific killer like DeMeo or Gas Pipe or, one of these guys who were serious killers, and these guys went out, or, any of the Greg Scarpa. These guys were out on their own hand doing the work. Sammy would do or involved in one murder himself, and this is not me just saying. So somebody asked him that on his show. That's trial minutes. I believe he had 2 shootings, and for the people that are out there, he killed that young kid. That boy was 15 years old, and he killed him. So there is no explanation for child pornography or killing children.
So we'll do a follow-up episode on that.
I'm looking forward to that.
And we'll address, honestly, I think we maybe even fun to address like the comments directly, debunk what's true and not true. But today we're talking about somebody else that we haven't spoken about yet on our show, which is Roy DeMeo. A lot of people have wrote in and want you to kind of debrief what he was, because he was ruthless and I think set a foundation of like what the mob was at its worst in a lot of ways, right? In terms of just like pure like violence, less of like the money, but like, well, obviously connected, but just like egregiously violent. So I'll let you kind of give a little bit of context to who he was and all that.
Well, Roy DeMeo was, back in that era, there's a lot of things that I talk about, is that era was some serious killers. Some guys this was the old style of the mafia, back from, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, even to the early 2000s. People were out there killing and shooting. The new mob, there's a handful of serious tough guys in the mob, but there's always tough guys out there. But there isn't any shooting like it was before. Things are different because of technology, because of all the bosses ratting, what I always say. All the bosses were cooperating and ratting, and informants and wearing wise like Joe Messina from the boss of the Bonanno family. And by the way, we'll get into that too. Vidia Sarah just passed away, and he was a captain in the Bonanno family and around for forever. So I don't know the exact age that he died, but well in his 80s. So the difference is you got guys, and I'll give you an example. I might as well read it right here. You have a list of people Roy DeMeo killed himself. He killed Paul Rosenberg. He killed Andre Katz. He killed Vito Borelli, that was involved with killings with him prior. He killed Joseph Roschini. He killed Vinny the Mook Gomarata. He killed George Burham. He killed Mickey Spillane. He killed Charles Ruby Stein. He killed Gerona Hoffa. He killed John and Quinn and Cherry Golden. I believe he testified in a grand jury, and she got shot 3 times in the head because of it. Daniel Conti. He killed John Costello. He killed Michael Magnolino and Nino Martini. He killed Patrick Provenzano, Michael DiCarlo, Kevin Gulli, Joseph Scorney, Danny Grillo, Gary Gardine, Peter Waring, Scott Cafaro, Fred Todaro, and Charles Padnick, William Serrano, and 2 that are unnamed. He killed Jamie Padnick, Dominic Ragucci, Chris Rothenberg, James Esposito, and Eppolito Jr. He killed Dowd and Ronald Vaccaro, Joseph Cappellino, Patrick Penny, Charles Montenegro, and Daniel Scotoro, Frank Amato, James Burnett, Joseph Vigiano, Paul and Al Vigiano, John and Anthony Romano, Albert Soma, Richard Denomi and John Bade and Frederick Zayden, something like that. This is a serious prolific killer. And not that we're glorifying it, but this guy and his crew, Joey Testa, Anthony Santa, and his brother Patty, were Nino Gaggi, were these guys, and Nino was the captain of that crew, was serious mob killers. Everybody was petrified of them.
What? So he was a little bit, he died in 83.
He knew he was paranoid. There was a case going at that time with Paul Castellano. All the killing he was doing, they were dismembering bodies for the people who don't know. And
what's the, I mean, you know, obviously it's gruesome, it's horrible, it's violent. But like, why does somebody like that go so far to doing, you know, the way that, and we'll talk about it in a second with the Gemini method, but like to be so violent and so gruesome? Is it to make statements? Is it?
No, I don't think it's to make statements. You know, sometimes you get rid of a body like that here or there because if there's no body, there's no case. Especially in the old days, you know, your bosses couldn't turn on you and different things because of the RICO law, and that changed later on. But I think just a sickness, really, you know, and the guy enjoyed killing, and he didn't have no qualms with killing women too. If they were in his way, or if he believed that they were a girlfriend, boyfriend, husband, wife, he didn't care. He killed them if they were in his way. If he thought they had any knowledge of him, or if they screwed him over in any which way, they were gone.
Does it, I mean, especially when you start going towards women and children, like, shouldn't the other families really take that personally? Because that becomes somebody that is, like, completely disrespecting everything the mob is about.
Well, the problem with that was he was feared so much. His crew was feared so much. Nobody even wanted to take the contract from Paul to carry out, from Castellano I'm talking about, to carry out and kill Roy. Nobody wanted to go near the guy. Anything he wanted, guys kind of, you know, went along with, because they would fear the idea of killing him, that his crew was very dangerous. His friends were very dangerous. How are they going to kill this guy? So everybody was, which you really can't do in a mob, but everybody was using excuses. They couldn't get to him. It was too hard to get to him, making excuses that he knows he has a feeling that we're going to come kill him, so we can't do it. And they're all bowing out to kill him.
What made him, how deep was his crew?
Well, he had the Testa brothers and Joey and Anthony Santa, and actually Nino Gaggi were accused of being the shooters of Roy DeMeo when he finally does get killed, because nobody else could get near him, and they were told they get a pass, no one will kill them if they kill him. But I don't believe Nino Gaggi was there. There was different conversations that he was there. He wasn't there. I don't believe he was there. But Joey Testa ended up staying with the Gambino family. And Patty Testa is the one I knew. I knew Patty since I'm a kid. And actually, as a kid, you'd think he's a lot older than me. He's only 6 or 7 years older than me. So at the time, he had call outs. The brothers had call outs in Canarsie and in Howard Beach also. He had a small call out in Howard Beach, and he used to give me calls as a kid. I'm a kid. He was really a young guy, too, in his early 20s. He wasn't a 30-year-old guy. And when you look back, he seems so much older when you're younger. But he ended up with the Lucchese family, to answer your question.
Right. Yeah, I'm looking at I'm looking at some of the details from Roy DeMeo in his life. He had one of his first members was 16 years old, Chris Rosenberg, who met DeMeo in 1966 when he was dealing marijuana at a Canarsie gas station. I mean, that's like, you know.
Well, he killed some 19-year-olds, some 20-year-olds. But you got to remember something. He started killing young, too. He was only about 30 years. He died young. He died at about 42, 43 years old. but he started killing the ones that we know of at about 30. I don't know prior to that the history of, is he accused of any other cold case murders that we don't know about. They say he killed, they always exaggerate these numbers that he killed a couple hundred people. I mean, he didn't kill couple hundred people, but he did kill a lot, and everybody was afraid of this crew. So the only way to kill him is the way they kill most guys in a mob. Their friends do it.
Yeah, I mean, one of the big themes, here is really, like, I think fear. And do you think that the fear just comes from the stories of how he's killing people, or is it also the pressure and other ways that he's controlling people and creating, like, a sense of, like, this is the most prolific guy at the time?
He's killing for himself. He's killing for his crew. They're killing because of hijackings they did and people they thought that were giving him up. And he's also killing for the Gambino family, from Paul Castellano. He's his personal hitman. So this was a guy that everybody knew was almost untouchable because Paul was very powerful back then.
Right.
Other families, they got along with Paul because he made money. That's why they weren't happy when he got killed. And I'm talking about the Genovese family, the Casey family. When you're making money with a guy, you're not going to go and kill one of his guys without talking to Paul. Is it okay to kill him? Right. And to Paul, it wasn't okay to kill him because he used them at, anytime he felt like it to go take care of whatever work he needed. And he was a big money guy with him too. They were in a car business and they brought in big money for Paul. You're not talking about car business in a small manner. These guys were back in the days, when you're tagging and flipping, selling cars internationally, and so they're putting in a lot of work, and that was part of Paul's income also. Not that he needed it. He had 1,000 different incomes, but still, this is the mob. They don't let you touch their money.
According to this source, it says the crew is believed to be responsible for up to 200 murders, many of which were committed by DeMeo himself.
Well, that's why I said earlier, when you're talking about prolific killers, DeMeo was a prolific killer. Sammy tries to implement himself like he's on this kind of level, which is laughable. The guy killed one guy and a child. And, and he has an excuse for that. When he felt like it, he used to brag that it was him involved in killing that kid. Then it wasn't him. He cares about kids, but then he's in the child pornography business with DB. And they set DB up and kill him in I believe it was in Sammy's cafe, over money, not over morals. So when these people, these fanboys, are okay with child pornography, that's their mentality.
But what happens to, 200 people is a lot of people. Like, how do you get away with? I mean, that's like a rinse and repeat. Like,
well, first it was a different era.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I get that, but still.
And there's no cameras around, and they did dispose of a lot of these bodies. So a lot of these bodies are disposed of, and the only way you're going to get them is the way they do get them later on, is through their own friends, and they get hit. He gets hit with a case, actually, with Paul Castellano, and that's the reason why they don't really kill him because of all the murders he's doing. They kill him because Paul thinks he's going to flip on the case. Oh. So Paul orders him, to be hit because he's got too much exposure between all the murders and the case itself.
So will you describe what the Gemini Method was? Because they became known for it.
Dismembering bodies and in bathtubs and draining the blood, cutting up the bones.
I mean, that's a level of like sickness and illness that that's like complete serial killer. Like,
well, there's a couple of guys like that. He's not the only one. It was Tommy Karate that we did the show on. We had his friend on our show, and these guys are on a different level. That's, to me, exactly what you just said. It's not a typical mob hit. You hit them, and once in a while you get rid of the body. You dump them somewhere. You put them in acid. You put them in, because of the trail of body DNA. But when you're doing this on a regular basis, especially back in those days when they didn't have the technology that they have today, it was just something of a sickness. So when you talk about guys that are doing things like this, you got to be mentally ill. They're jumping in the bathtub with these bodies and draining blood and chopping up the body. It's a little off.
So Is the Gemini method just the dismembering, or is it? I think it's also had to do. Why was it named the Gemini method?
Because of the bar they stayed in. That was the lounge.
Okay.
And then they became known as the Gemini Crew.
Where was that?
In Brooklyn also. So these guys were, they were a tight crew, actually. They were really, they were close with each other. And but, everybody's close when there's money being made and you're out there and you're hijacking and you're moving like you're moving a little bit of weed. The car business, they were all in the car business. But when the pressure comes down, then you see when guys start turning on each other. And that's the usual thing in a mob. You could go from, when people talk about the loyalty goes as far as until you think your life's in danger, which Roy did. He was coming out where he would take a shotgun and wear it inside his jacket, a sawed-off shotgun. And he wasn't coming around anymore because he knew he was going to get hit. And then eventually when he does get hit, the loyalty is from your friends that think their lives are in danger. There's no more loyalty. If the money stops, there's no more loyalty. So you got one end of guys turn on each other by killing them.
Right.
And then you got another guy like Joe Messina wearing a wire on Vinny Gorgeous, who becomes the acting boss of that family and the rest of the family. So, there is no, when people talking about this, and so when all these knuckleheads are writing these comments on these shows, or on our show, anybody's show, they don't make a little bit of sense because they never lived it.
Right.
They play a video game and they think they're part of something. Or if they write a troll message, they feel that they're part of something.
Right.
Instead of just saying, listen, you want to hear a story, listen to the story, but don't act like you're on his team like this is New York Yankees and this is a great thing they're doing. But the part when I keep saying he was a fraud, he was a fraud. Did he get to a level? Yeah, by title.
Right.
But that doesn't make you a proficient at something, whether it's the mob or whether it's in sports. If you're on a team and it doesn't mean if you're a pro ball player it means something. But if you're on some team and you're just playing ball like every other kid,
Right.
it doesn't mean a thing.
So then there was also when he died, he disappeared for 10 days.
Well, because they kill him, they hit him. I believe they shot him about 10 times, head and body, and they put him in the trunk of a car so nobody could find him for 10 days. And then eventually, either the smell or somebody happened on the car. I don't know, or maybe they left a plate on the car. So eventually, the police look at the car. I don't know exactly how they found that car.
Could somebody argue? I mean, where do you think he is in terms of the biggest serial killers in mafia history? He's really up there.
There's not too many guys that did what he's done. And like I said, he was feared through the whole mob. Nobody's going to say there were certain guys that were feared through the mob. He was one of them. Anthony Sato was also feared, obviously. He's in prison. Nino Gadji, he died right before the trials, I believe. I don't think he went into prison, but he was he died. Natural death, I think, cancer. Cancer or heart attack, doesn't matter, he died. And Joey Testa's in prison also for life. And one part of the story that people don't know also is when Patty Testa, that's the brother I know, he's in, I believe it was in Brooklyn, and when he was at the car lot, one or two guys came in and shot him in the face and in the head a couple of times and killed him. And the story goes that Lucchese boss Gaspipe wanted to make it look like the Gambino family killed him, and this way they could retaliate, and they wanted to kill John Gotti Jr. actually. So Gaspipe, I believe that was around 92. Gaspipe wanted to kill Gotti Jr. Because he was mad at what happened with Paul Castellano getting killed still, and they were picking apart our guys one after another.
So you were, when DeMeo died, how old were you? You were 17, 18.
When DeMeo died, I was...
I think he died in...
About 19 years old. So he died about, I think, 83, right?
83,
yeah.
Correct.
So when I met Testa, I had to be 14, 15, 16. So to me, I looked at him like he was almost like 30.
Right.
And actually, he was only probably around 22, 23. And he was already had the call lots. And I didn't know how to drive a stick. He used to tell me, don't worry, take it. and I would drive the stick and bring it back. And he was actually very nice. But then I'd go to Brooklyn and go see him and his brother. They listen. There's always a part of them, like everybody says, you don't understand. There's a separation between work and play and business. And as a kid, yeah, he was a really nice guy to me. He was. His brother was very nice to me. These guys, Roy, I never met, or at least I don't remember meeting him as a kid. Maybe I did meet him. I just didn't know who he was because I was a kid. But they were, when people say, when you hear people say, "Hey, was he nice?" Yeah, he was a nice guy. But when they kill Patty Testa, there was no real. They didn't care about killing him,
right?
Because he was Joey's brother, and they were the Gambino faction.
Right.
So if Gaspipe had to put a what do you call it, sacrificial lamb out,
right,
it was no big deal to kill Patty. And I think that's the reason Patty really got killed. There's some different rumors out there, but I believe that's the truth behind it, because they wanted to kill her, Gotti Jr. in retaliation to Gotti Sr.
It's also interesting, looking a little bit at Roy DeMeo's life and his childhood. I think, and you wonder how somebody can get to be that serial killer, or
but you got to remember, in the era when he's killing like that, I've said this a ton of times. Back then, you didn't know who really was a killer, who was a shooter, unless you're intimately with that crew, because so many guys were getting killed and shot that if you're a faker and you carried yourself well and you kept a low key and you were quiet and you played the part, nobody would know if you're one of those guys,
right,
a shooter or a killer. And these days, they can't get away with that. The only ones that we know that are killers are the people we grew up that we know in the past, their history, what they did, what they didn't do. The new generation of guys aren't putting any work in, so there is nothing to think that maybe he did something. Maybe there's no work being done.
Well, it's also interesting, too, if you look at the time frames, like his older brother, Anthony Frank DeMeo, was a U.S. Marine. He was killed in action in the Korean War in 1951. And then his father died of a heart attack 9 years later. And that's kind of like when I think a lot of his killing starts. So you don't know, too, right? Like, it's a lot of, you lose your brother, you lose your dad. I think his mom actually even, when Roy was 19, his mother subsequently returned to Italy with Roy's youngest brothers. So he had like no one, So it becomes like you and the street and the people that take you in, and I could understand how it gets easy to get roped into that life.
I don't know what happened with he was married also. I don't know what happened with his wife, but I bet you anything she cooked whatever he wanted when he asked for it.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, I don't know. I really don't know much about his wife, but he was married. He does have a son or something.
Right.
A book. I forget the name of the book. And I'm not sure of his son's name. Maybe Albert. I don't remember. I'm just throwing it out. But it could be Albert. I don't remember.
Did you ever, was the Gemini Lounge around when you were?
Yeah. So, they listen, everybody knew, as a young guy, you hear stories even then. And, I knew when I first met Patty, when he gave me a call and I said, how do you know I'll bring it back? And he just winked at me and he says, yeah, you'll bring it back. And, then I realized I saw this guy's, because when I first met him, I didn't know who he was. He was a guy selling cars. I was a kid. I bicycled in there.
Right.
And he goes, you want that car? And I go, yeah, but I don't have the money for it. He goes, that's all right. You could take it. And, I said, I don't drive. He goes, yeah, you'll learn.
Yeah.
And this is exactly that.
Right.
He just took a liking to me. He says, don't worry, take it, bring it back. And I'd practice on his cars. And then he gave me a stick shift and I didn't know how to drive it. So I was driving up the boulevard and I said, I'm going to kill the clutch. He goes, oh, we'll put a new one in. Like, he really was nice to me.
Yeah.
Like, he wasn't running from me. He wasn't doing it. He was just being a nice guy to me and say, yeah, thank you. So,
are there any, who then takes over after DeMeo's gone from his?
Well, for a very short period of time, Testa did, and Anthony sent them, but they don't last. Because they get hit with cases a couple of years after that. And they get life sentences. So, just like anything, it's like this is the thing about the mob. So when people are talking about, loyalty, there is none. It's all about saving your own skin, making money, And when that runs dry, you do what Joe Messina did, or, any of these guys from any of these other crews, that are, talking. I mean, every crew. But, you talk about Philadelphia, guys are talking about Joey Molino doing the show. And, you have the New York guys calling him a rat, and this guy calling him, and, he had an uncle that testified. His uncle, his father's brother, actually, was a rat or cooperative, whatever word you want to use. So, everybody's got an opinion about this life. And, if when you're involved in the life, you start believing that too. I mean, I stayed in jail years while everybody was ratting on me. And then you say to yourself, this ain't about that. When you start realizing this is only about self-survival and money. And that's the truth in the history. So when you have these naive guys writing, it's just because they're just guys that play on computers and watch gangster movies. They're not, the gangsters, you've seen every boss across the country. I've said it on every show. They're cooperating, from every family. It's not like, well, just once in a while, it's, one after another. Sammy Gravano is a proven fact. He ratted. He can say anything he wants. Joe Messina wore a wire. I mean, he just recently died also. So he was a legendary, The Last Don. There's a book about him, and legendary. But if you knew Joe, the way I knew Joe, right. So I knew Joe. So, when you see these guys, but I'm going to say something and I said it on one other show, and I'll say it again. One of the toughest, nicest gangsters I ever met was Joey Scopa. And, you don't have a lot of people talking about him. Now that I mentioned, they'll all try to talk about him, but I'm going to do a show on him. But they don't know him. I did. I knew him since I'm a young guy. And he was one of the classiest guys, one of the toughest guys, and a real gentleman. We definitely got to do a show on it.
Well, I guess a little sneak peek, what made him classy and a gentleman?
Just a very soft-spoken guy. Very nice to everybody. Not a fake nice guy. Just sincere. To people in the street, to young kids, to his son's children, the way he used to carry his son around. He loved his son. He'd play with him. He'd kiss him. He's always hugging him, brought him everywhere. He was just a total gentleman. I never seen him ever lose his temper where he took advantage of his position and talked against anybody. Anyway, he never dressed anybody down in front of me, nothing. And I seen it, and he was around his club. It was a couple of blocks from ours, from the Bergen Hunt and Fish Club. So he was by us every day, or we were down by him, sending messages back and forth. And he just was a complete gentleman every which way. And, and a legitimate, and I said this even when he died,
Mm-hmm.
he was he died tough. And, there's no honor really, I tell you the truth. And, I don't want people to be wrong, but when he died, the truth is the truth. He told them to go fuck themselves. And he had no gun, he had nothing. He knew he was getting it in front of his house. And he just told them, go ahead, because they were scared to get near him. Because they didn't know if he had a gun on him. Right. After they hit him, he was still moving. And, but I speak highly on a lot of reasons that, my bachelor party we had in Al Beach, and he was there, and he was very generous with the envelope he gave. I mean, it's just everything about the guy. I can't say this. He dressed well. Just very good to all his childhood friends. So you can go on about him. He was really a good guy.
I think for me, what interests me is like, and you're an example of this as well, but Roy DeMeo and now other people you bring up too, it's like it's such a weird kind of concept to be a nice guy and also have killed. And I think that like in no other aspect of anything in history really is there such a like black and white of one day I'm a killer, 1 second I'm a killer, the next second I'm a friend, I'm a father, I'm a lover. Like, did you ever feel when you were active like something's wrong with me, or like how could I be a killer 1 second and then go back to my family, or go back and be a nice guy, or try to be a nice guy? Like it's a weird kind of dichotomy when you look at it like that.
Because you live by a set of rules, and you make your own rules in your head. The mob
Right.
has its rules, and listen, the mob. If I've gone through these rules over and over again.
Yeah.
You're not allowed to do interviews. You're not allowed to do TV shows. You're not allowed to write books. You're not allowed to, plea out that you're part of an organization. You're not allowed to plea out that you are to a position in a mob. And these guys are doing it now. Now you have opinions of the guys that are not doing it, and they'll call them all, I hear stories all day from guys that I still know on the street. They'll call them all rats, right? So they don't like that we're doing these shows. I'm not in that life. I'm not active, and I really don't care what they say. Everybody knows how I feel about this. But when they talk about other guys, you have active guys in New York, they're not happy that Joey Molino, I just use his name, is doing shows, and they're calling him a rat. So now he's going to have his own opinion and say, I really don't give a fuck what they say. And if I was Joey, I would say the same thing. I don't give a fuck what you say.
What's your opinion on Joey doing his...
Again, it's his prerogative, whatever reason he's doing it. I don't know why he's doing it. I mean, I'm going by the mob rules. That's what their rules are. My personal thing, go do whatever you want to do. It's your life. If you want to make money from it, whatever you got, you caught yourself an angle and you think it's okay, go ahead. I mean, you got guys all day writing books. Columbo wrote a book years ago. So you get guys that do interviews. You got guys that are on the sneaker informants. You got guys that are, allocuting to what I said, positions. That's a rule. They can't just change it because they feel like changing. Well, I'm going to save 3 years. They already know the mob exists. That's not the way rules work. You can't just do anything you feel like doing, but they all break these rules. So my position is whatever he's doing is his business. And same thing with all these guys that are doing these shows. A lot of these guys, like Mikey Scars, does know the life, so when he's doing a show. But when you got imbeciles that are sitting up there like, and I'm going to use that little prick that I don't like, Jeff Nadeau, right? Because he talks bullshit. He doesn't even know what he's talking about. And he acts like he does, and he reads something somewhere. He's not actively involved. He didn't know Patty Testa. He doesn't know any of these guys. He wasn't in cars with us when we're going to do a hit or a robbery or a hijacking. So they're just talking nonsense. So they got a following? Yeah, they built themselves a following, so you can't begrudge them that part. The part you can begrudge them is when they talk firsthand about you like they know you, or they got factual information that's not factual. Well, they bend the truth when they feel like it.
Do you think that we're within the last generation of people that'll even really give a fuck about this genre, right? Because now now the mob's basically dead. You have the 30 and 40-year-olds who remember that when it was around when they were kids, but I think that in 20 or 30 years, there's going to be less and less people that are actually going to it'll be really more of a myth and a part of history as opposed to something that, I don't know, people really care. People get, it blows my mind. We see some of these comments and we don't look at all of them, but whenever you just randomly scroll, you see a lot of people that they care about who was real and who wasn't, or
they got a life. That's why.
It's crazy.
It's okay to watch The Sopranos and like the show. And at the end, when you close your TV, you go, hey, that was a good show. But it's a show. These guys actually are frustrated. It's like, I used to say that in sports. The coaches that abuse these kids and they're screaming and they're all dressed up. Right. And they got their whistle. They sucked in sports. They're frustrated at it.
Yeah.
But the same with the mob. The mob isn't dead. It's actually just almost like a white-collar organization. They're making money in different fields, which, hey, that's if you can make money and you go, the government, in my opinion, is bigger thieves and gangsters. and it's not that I'm sticking up for the mob, but the truth is, and I said it, John Gotti said this years ago, and he's right. Look what they're doing, Mitch McConnell, on all sides of the aisle. Mitch McConnell, Nancy Pelosi, what's her name, Feinberg, whatever her name was, that passed away recently with $100 million she left her family. Feinstein. You have this omnibus bills that they're sneaking in all kinds of money. So it's, they're playing with all our money. And somebody wrote me something the other day, it's so true. You work all week, and they take your money out at the end of the week, your taxes. If they don't think they took enough, they try to put you in jail. Meanwhile, they take your money, you work for your family's money, sweat and tears, and they're sending it where they feel like sending it to other countries, and not to our inner cities, and not to education, and not to the structure of your infrastructure. And they'll tell you what, meanwhile, they're robbing inside trading, they're doing all this corrupt stuff, and they want to know we elected them, they work for us. Now they became, these guys think they're the gatekeepers of our lives, and there's the mistake. And that division, they keep trying to divide people or neighborhoods with each other. I mean, a friend of mine the other day from Wisconsin, as well in Chicago, without saying names, he just came home. Nice guy, great guy, well spoken. We talked about this, the manipulation of racial tensions,
Right.
Religious tensions, whatever you think. They're always trying to divide you, and this is the reason why I say they're mobsters now, because this is tactics of the mafia. But the government's so much bigger and stronger and making $1 zillion doing what they're doing. I got to say one last thing.
Yeah.
And they started this war. Joe Biden and the rest of these flunkies sent billions of dollars to Iran. And Iran doesn't like us, doesn't like a lot. They don't like their own people. They killed them in 2022. My Iranian friends and their families were all over the street protesting. Instead of Joe Biden helping them, he gave money to Iran to stifle it, kill them, torture them, jail them. So why are you sending a regime like this kind of the money? This is what's the objective?
Yeah, no, I think I always thought like the biggest corrupt systems have to be politics, big pharma. Anything else?
Yeah, the media.
Oh.
They're owned by the same organizations.
It's crazy.
Yeah, people get a little smart. This song is.
Well, I think it's interesting, and I hope people that have listened to us for a long time, maybe think this or don't. But I think I've learned from doing this show for a couple of years. It's like you see a lot of parallels when there's money involved. It's really the same. The mob and the politics, it's the same thing. When there's big money involved, like
we used to run numbers the mob, and the government does lotto. Same shit.
Yeah, they take half the.
We used to be bookmakers. Now they legalize gambling. We used to sell weed. Now they made weed legal. Yeah. So what everybody asks me, what's going on? When they start rerouting and restructuring a city or a town, trust me, they already bought the land prior to them doing this, so now their money goes up. Same thing. We were in Wall Street. They went after everybody in Wall Street. The first place Obama went for 100 speeches after he said he hated him was to Wall Street. They're inside trading. So you could go on and on. So when evidence, there's evidence. They're the real cases.
You think it'll ever change?
No, it's getting worse and worse. Unless the people really wake up together collectively and say, okay, we had enough of this. You're not taking our taxes anymore, and you're not sending them wherever you feel like it, or we're not paying them. And everybody collectively don't pay your taxes. And then what are they going to do? From now on, if everybody stuck together and said, no, we want to see where our money's going. Right. You're not going to just send $60 billion to Iran and tell them they're going to be for the people that believe in the Green Deal and all that stuff, do you know that the effect is 0.04%? And out of that, no matter what we do as a country, the world, not just the United States, only 11% of 0.04% affects our atmosphere. So when they sell this nonsense to everybody, they're just full of shit. It's just a way for them to control you, make money, and they got a money grab at the end of it. They don't give a shit about nothing. None of them do. That's why they do it with this spending is out of control like this. We're $33 trillion, I believe, in debt, something like that.
Yeah. The debt is actually insane.
So Roy DeMeo, after all this, isn't that bad compared to the way they kill everybody.
Yeah, it's a different kind of, it's definitely different, but I guess I get your point. It's scary to think, They don't care about the future generations. They don't care about the kids. They don't care. Listen, we're not going to go into politics today, but when you have Epstein Island that we did the show on, yeah,
and there's no other co-defendants, but yet there was all kinds of rapes going on there and child pornography, and where's all the witnesses? And another witness who testified against him just recently died. Oh, that's coincidental. Another coincidental death. I mean, this is what goes on. So there's no list that come out. You get the list on everybody else, every other person that does something like that. But they don't want to give this list up because who are they protecting? And so, when they talk about equal justice, there's no equal justice.
Did you care about politics when you were younger in the mob?
A little bit.
Were you guys rooting for specific people?
Back then, we were all Democrats.
Right.
And now I look at it and I'm like, well, now I'm nowhere near. I'm an independent, but I'm not. Our Democrat Party now, in my opinion, is a Communist Party. My opinion. And, I think RFK is a Democrat, a true Democrat. Tulsi Gabbard's a true Democrat. I think most people are in the middle of the road. They don't want to see this way all the way to right. They don't want to see all the way to left. I just know that no matter what they say is, look at all the wars and everything else is going on. And I think things were a lot better 4, 5, and 6 years ago. So, cost of living was cheaper. What I always say, gas was cheaper, independence. We had no wars. We had no problems. People getting along. Interest rates were down. I mean, you can go through the whole gamut. Our borders wide open with disease and drugs, and they, fentanyl killed my daughter and other families, and it's paying for the rest of our lives, and and nothing's being done about it. Biden never went down to the border one time. This is intentional. This is not that he's a nitwit. He's doing it intentionally. They're trying to destroy the country.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think enough said on that. Anything else we want to touch on in this episode that, with regards to Roy DeMeo?
Follow, subscribe. DeMeo and Testa Santa and Gadget were probably in our generations probably the biggest murderer crew around. Money makers. They were gangsters.
Well, I guess before you go, is that somebody that you, for lack of a better word, took notes from, when you were young, because you were 19 at the time, you.
No, if guys that I looked up to when I was younger and I met them at younger ages was Patty and Joe Testa. They dressed well. They spoke. They carried themselves well. They drove nice cars. I mean, those were your guys you looked at. Johnny Koenig, I always say, because same thing. Joey Scopo, Mark Ryder was another guy who got life. He wasn't a killer and nothing like that, but he was a mover and shaker, and he went away for life on a drug case. But he was a sharp guy. He used to talk about, we were all driving around boats and cigarette boats and, fancy cars, convertibles, and that was what I looked at, having fun. I didn't like the guys that sit in the club and play cards all day.
Right. All right. Well, thank you guys.
Subscribe.
Hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, drop your comments below. If you have any suggestions on things you want us to talk about on future episodes, we try to do a little bit of mob history as well, as you just saw. Some current, some old people and figures during that time period. So we try to cover it all here. But thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you next week.
See ya. Have a shot.